morning, Bucharest. How are you doing today? Great Saturday morning. I'm glad you're spending some time with us. Today we're going to explore more ways that you can stay young, stay vital, stay healthy, and most important, how many of you want to be sexy? Raise your hand. That's really why we're here. So this is the latest science. It's amazing to me. Every single year, there's ongoing science from all over the globe. And what we've been finding is so many people are basically ignoring these things. And it's unfortunate because the experts, by the way, should be keeping up with what is important, what is really relevant. And when we call ourselves doctors, it is an imperative. It's a necessity that we actually make sure that we know what's best for the people we work with. Now, this is what the human cell looks like. Isn't that amazing? You have so many of those cells. And your cells are calibrated to eat certain frequencies. This is the Earth frequency, 7.84. Your cell is 75 hertz. So at the dawn of the human race, at the beginning of the human race, what happened is that the body was told what frequency it should eat. The only food that has a frequency of 7.84 is raw plant-based food. And I'll repeat it again. So your body's cells are programmed to, in fact, only eat food that's raw plant-based food. Because raw plant-based food, in fact, is connected to the planet itself, and that's how your body works. Now, here are the powerful science on what happens when you eat raw food and when you don't eat raw food. So let's go through this list. Number one, when you cook a food, and we're talking about organic plants, we're not talking about the Romanian diet, bad everything. We're talking about organic plant foods. Number one, you have a harmful compound called an acrylamide, AGE, and PAHs. All of these are directly scientifically linked, and we'll talk about the latest 2025 research, to causing cancer and other diseases. This is why at times you see people who are on healthy diets, as rare as it is, they still get sick. And the biggest reason is that they're only eating food that has no bad things in it, but it doesn't have the good things in it. And that's most important. Number two, nutrient loss, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and prebiotics. So a lot of the plant-based doctors who tell you how nourishing a cooked plant-based diet is, they are obviously not scientists. Because what we know is when you cook a food, you kill the majority of that or distort it. Number three, the immune system effect. This is the oldest finding. As a matter of fact, it's over 90 years, 92 years ago, right here in Europe at the Pasteur Institute, a Russian called Ryshkinikov figured out that when you heat a food at a high temperature, it converts itself to a carbon compound, and when that occurs, the body's immune system identifies it as it would a mutagen, meaning a cancer, or a virus or a bacteria. Raw foods benefit by phytochemicals, anti-aging, and disease prevention. So now we're going to go through each and every one of these so that you're very clear. This is one of my old favorites, frying. We fry just about everything we could get our hands on. And so we take bad things and make them worse by frying them. And this is certainly something that we do in Romania, because I know my Hungarian grandmother fried the hell out of everything. And so acrylamides, carcinogens formed in starchy foods at high temperature. So what's a starchy food at a high temperature? How about a French fry? How about a donut? How many of you know how they make donuts? They actually take oil and they boil it and they put carbohydrates in it. How about most of the cookies that you eat? So when you go to the health store and you buy health cookies, they are carcinogens. But worse than that, how about the organic cereals that you eat? Organic cereals are heated at high temperatures. They are cancer-causing elements. Now, these are not things we suspect I'm right on. These are absolutely correct we're right on. And so number 2, AGEs, advanced glycation end products. A lot of fancy words. We'll just call it AGE. Linked to insulin-resistant, oxidative stress, and a plethora of disease. So what is insulin resistance? Some of you are sitting here with that. That's called, if you're lucky, low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. If you're not lucky, it's called diabetes. And if you're really, really not lucky, now your eyesight is going, you have neuropathy, and your limbs are coming off. If you remain diabetic with insulin resistance long enough, you're going to lose your limbs, and you're going to have pain and suffering with it. And this is 100% correctable, 100% lifestyle choices. And what's ironic, we have a multi-trillion-dollar health industry that's controlled by the pharmaceutical industries, and they don't mention a thing about this to any people who are sick. It is outrageous. It's criminal activity as far as I'm concerned. Next, polycyclic or aromatics, hydrocarbons. Carcinogens formed by grilling, frying fat animals and vegetables. So we used to love to go out on the grill. You know, right now you're getting to summertime here in Romania, and you have the grills in the backyard, and you take the asses of animals. You know, how many of you know what you're eating is the asses of animals most of the time? And you're taking that ass of an animal, and you're putting it on a grill, and you're charcoal burning this. This one we've known about 49 years now. That once you do that, it causes carcinogens and also gives you heart problems, strokes, phlebitis, etc. Then we have leukocytosis. That's what we talked about earlier. Leukocytosis is when the leukocyte, the white blood cell, identifies a food as a foreign and bad guy and comes and attacks it. Now, why is that a problem? Because your immune system is supposed to be protecting you from aging and disease. You have this unbelievable, beautiful army in your body of cells. And they are called eosinophils and basophils and nucleocytes and grandocytes. And each and every one of them look out for certain bad guys. Some look out for viruses, some for bacteria, some for cancer, some for mold, some for parasites, some for yeast. And this evolved over millions and millions of years. And they are there to protect you from the bad guys that can kill you. Now, what happens if I eat a cooked food, and now that army of good guys is doing the work of getting rid of the cooked food? Well, it's not getting rid of the virus or the cancer at that point. Do you follow? So this is really simple to understand, but seemingly most scientists are not smart enough to understand it, because this is mainstream science we're talking about. So now we get into some really interesting things with this. The frequency of life from energy to biology. Processed and canned food have zero energy. So you're getting zero from it. It's taking energy from your body to eliminate it. The Schumann resonance, 7.83, the Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat. This will influence your well-being, your consciousness. DNA resonates at half, 0.5, 0.15, frequency at which the DNA works. You need energy in your body for your DNA to work. Infrared light, this is why infrared is so incredibly good for you today. This is one heating up your cells and creating the kind of frequency. Visible light, this is 428 to 789. Part of the sunlight that gets into your body and makes you young and vital and healthy. UV rays, 750 to 3000, plays a key role in biological function. So this is why sunlight and eating food with sunlight are so amazingly important for you. Living foods, raw foods, feed the human tissue. They're both at the same frequency. But cooked food is not at the same frequency. Just like living raw foods, our bodies are designed to function with structure, high energy, biophotons, which we spoke about yesterday. The more natural and unpressed our food, the more it resonates with the frequency of our cell, naturally emitting, supporting healthy, vital lives. So it is unfortunate that universities do not teach this. Where do I get this data out? From the most progressive doctors around the world at universities. So what's happening is who controls the university are the food industries, they fund them. The drug industry, they fund them. All the bad guys fund them. So when they're doing good work, you never have an opportunity to hear it because there's no money in it for them to tell you what I'm telling you today. So now we're going to go through, this is below 140 C. So foods at this temperature, you're getting everything in it, all the frequencies are in it. And you have no worries at that point of getting sick or getting a disease from that food. But when you move up just a slight bit, above 105 to 140, this is when degradation begins. So now we start to denature the energy. The energy is coming out of the food at that particular point. Enzymes start to denature at 118, but most vitamins and minerals remain stable in that. And that's a low temperature, by the way. When we are steaming vegetables, they're much higher than that one. And you say, well, I'm only lightly steaming vegetable. And I always have a joke. I say there's two ways to kill people. Either you just shoot them or torture them. But at the end of the day, they die. And so that's how it works. Now we go up to 60 to 82. And this is where heat or oxygen exposure, degradation begins. That means breakdown. And this is sensitive to vitamins, like vitamin C goes away, vitamin B1's, folate. This is why so many women have birth defects. Because even if they're eating healthy diets, by the way, and most Romanian women are not eating healthy diets, so they have very little folate. But if you're eating a healthy diet and cooking it, you're still not getting the nutrients that the poor little baby needs to grow. And I would say that 87 to 88% of brain injury with babies happen to be coming because we lack folate. Now, this begins rapidly breaking down. Enzymes are fully inactive. That means they don't work. And you need enzymes in the body to digest food. The way that your body evolved is that the enzymes within your body interact with the enzymes in food so that now they're doing 50-50 the work and they can break down the food, meaning it goes from the mouth where you chew it, and that's where the enzymes introduce themselves. And then it breaks it down. It goes right down to the digestive tract, to the stomach, to the small intestine, to the large intestine after it's through the initial process. And if you do not have enzymes in the food, and the only food that have enzymes are raw, organic, plant-based food, you will never truly digest food. And so these are very important facts that you need to learn. Now we go up to what lightly steaming does. You know, when you're baking, it's much higher than this, but this is most steaming. That's 82 to 102. So now we have significant degradation, especially during boiling. Oxidation of fat and proteins begin. Now what we know is when you mess with proteins, they no longer can digest from your body, and they start to accrue. They start to gather together in the organ systems, and many of you in the veins. And so in the old days, when doctors wanted you to hear what they said, they used to call heart problems hardening of the arteries. So if you have proteins that can't leave the body, the minerals that can't leave the body, they join together and create hardness in your arteries, aging you prematurely. We also, especially during boiling, oxidation of fats and proteins begin. Still no toxic byproducts, but nutrient retention declines. Now we go up to what most of us are doing. And this is really where it starts to get. This is where acrylamides come in. And acrylamides are sort of the new one on the block. That's been around for almost 50 years now. And right here in Sweden is where they came up with that. And everyone laughed and laughed and laughed. What do you mean when you cook a food? It creates a very, very serious cancer-causing element. And then all at once, the Italians got a hold of it. And they did about 10 years of remarkable research on it. And now it's done globally. There are tens of thousands of research on acrylamides that prove to you that even an organic, plant-based food cooked at a high temperature causes cancer. And let's go back. The ones that even do a better job are the organic cereals that you're buying, the organic donuts that you're buying. Do you follow? The organic breads that you're buying. All of these cause cancer. Not because we think so, because we know so. And so this is Browning begins signaling chemical transformation of the food. So it's amazing that the food itself knows what you're doing to it. Just like if you're being tortured, it says, oh my God, I'm on my way to death. And it starts to signal the body's immunity, and the immune system now starts to be altered. Then we go up to, look at this, XX. This isn't for extra large clothes. This is for bad stuff. Now we go. High heat zone, toxic formation of the immune stress. Vitamins are destroyed and harmful compounds form rapidly, including acrylamides, carbs, HCAs, meats, PAHs, smoke fat drips, and AGEs, charred or brown foods at these temperatures contribute to oxidative stress. Remember, oxidative stress, or free radical damage, is the 100% cause of all aging and disease. So when you're sitting here aging prematurely or having a disease, it's because of oxidative stress. When did we learn that? When I was a little boy in 1954. And that has not changed. As a matter of fact, that's been challenged 10,964 times unsuccessfully. So that means it's going to be in the medical books forever. It's a done deal, as we say. Cooked harms health. Cooking transforms food's flavor, texture, but degrade nutrients and produce harmful substances. Immunity suffers when you fire your food. Now, I know many of you came here, you're still struggling giving up meat and dairy food, but I'm not here to be polite or to make you happy. I'm not here to tell you what you want. That's what con artist doctors tell you. That's what bullshit artists tell you. They want you to be happy so you keep coming back and spending money. I want you to be very unhappy with your lifestyle, because if you're not, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer prematurely. You're going to age prematurely. And these are the things that we know. And yesterday I said it, but I'll repeat it so that you know how dumb the human race is. How many of you know we're dumb? Raise your hand. The ones that don't raise your hand, you're as dumb as dumb. And the dumbest thing is that 100% of every other species on Earth in nature, 100% of every other species on Earth in nature eat a raw diet. We're the only species that choose to cook our food. And guess what? Look at how sick we are emotionally, spiritually, biologically. You know, right now I can go minutes from here into a war zone. That is insanity. That's insanity. And here you are in Romania thinking, are the damn Russians going to walk in here again? This is a world we live in. What's the reason for this? The reason is people loathe themselves. They hate themselves. They have no energy to be conscious and loving and compassionate. That's what we're meant to be. If any of you really understand theology and philosophy the way you should, not the way man sells it, but the way you should, it's all about forgiveness and empathy, compassion, love, harmony, peace. We celebrate these things, but do we achieve them? No, because we're destroying our bodies and our minds. And when you destroy your body and mind, you lose your soul. And when you lose your soul, it's perfectly fine to eat the carcasses of a dead animal or drink milk out of a perpetually pregnant animal. And you think it's normal because your mom and dad told you. But guess what? It is not normal. And today we're starting to awaken and show you how abnormal the way we've been living has been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And you can always give me a story. How about Aunt Sally, who was 80? But Aunt Sally was sick from the time she was 40. Just because people are breathing and walking doesn't mean they're healthy. It doesn't mean they're contributing. It doesn't mean they're giving. It doesn't mean they're conscious. And it certainly doesn't mean they're godly. So many of you go to church and get on your knees and pray to God, but then you spit in God's face because you destroy your body. How dare you do such a thing? If you really respect your life, you've got to raise yourself. And once you learn these things, you must proceed. Because knowing and not doing is worse than not knowing and not doing. Do you follow? Once you know, you've got to do it. You know, when I was a boy, actually, and I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day, I thought it was sexy to smoke cigarettes. Can you imagine that? Why? Because it was the advertisement. They had a cowboy on a horse, and he's riding, and girls are always running after him and say, hey, shit, if I can pick up girls, I'm going to smoke too. And then you dangle the cigarette, and before you know it, you're up to 1 pack and 2 packs and 3 packs. And do you realize that when I was a boy, they actually would advertise that doctors say cigarettes are good for your lungs? Think of this. So doctors prostituted themselves and would actually get in advertisements, many different doctors, and have cigarettes and say, this is good for your lungs, and it's good for sports. And we all believe that. But guess what happened? All at once, the government didn't start to like citizens. It just realized that the uninsured people that were dying of cancer was costing billions and billions of dollars. So then they said, well, we've got to get rid of cigarettes. You follow? And they got rid of cigarettes. And all at once we said, oh, how all these generations we thought cigarettes were good for us. Now we know they cause disease. And if you ask me, the number 1 cause for cancer is cigarettes. Yes, eating bad food will do it. Having negative attitude will do it. Having chemicals will do it. But number 1 still today in 2025 is smoking cigarettes cause not only lung cancer, but all forms of cancer. And by the way, we also started to do studies 40 years ago that showed if you lived in a house or you worked in an office with people who smoked, you were getting the same negative effect, if not worse. There were 10 or 11 studies that said you had worse problems than a person who smoked. I'll never forget, the whole world gave up cigarettes on airplanes. And then we went into a Russian airplane. We were going to Moscow, and it was, I almost died. And how many of you used to smoke? You gave up smoking. Raise your hand. We hate smoking more than people who don't smoke. When I smell smoke now, I get angry about it. Because our bodies know. Our bodies say, oh my God, here's that bad stuff again. Let's fight it. Harmful compounds from high heat, cooked. Now let's do a deep dive into this. Acrylamides form in starchy foods heated above 240 or 120 C. Fries, chips, breads, risky. There was a study done in Holland that was the most amazing study. They took over 60,000 women, and over here you have little tiny petite bags of chips. Have you ever seen the chips in the United States? We go to this place called Costco, and we get the family size. And it takes 2 people to carry the chip bag out, and each member of the family eat 1 of those a day. So they were looking at little petite, little small chip bags they have in Holland. And they found out that when women ate 5 chip bags a week, they had 100% higher ovarian cancer and endometrial cancer. Can you imagine? 5 chip bags a week, these little petite chip bags. 100% higher, double the amount of ovarian and endometrial cancer. How many of you know talcum powder creates ovarian cancer? You know when we knew that? 46 years ago. You know when that started to be taken care of? 5 years ago. Because lawyers finally started to sue. We have a friend that came through the Institute, healed a very, very, very severe form of cancer. And it was a cancer that normally in the lungs. And it was from talcum powder. Because my generation's parents used talcum powder like we do water. I mean, nobody I knew didn't use talcum powder. Putting it on their face, putting it on their back, putting it into their vagina, putting it on their, butt. They put talcum powder. Almost 50 years ago, we knew it caused cancer. Now they're starting to do something about it. That shows you how sick our system is. How many thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people died globally because we didn't shut that down. And by the way, there's not a need. If you go to the health store, they have cornstarch that does the same thing talcum powder that actually makes you healthy. Does the total opposite. Benchmark levels of potatoes produced products is around half a kilogram, yet over-fried French fries easily reach 3.5. Now, listen to what I'm saying. If you have a half a kilogram of over-fried, now every single time I ate French fries, which was practically every single day as a kid, I was eating about a half a kilo. I was eating double that amount. And many times I'd eat more than that in a day. And every time you get a hamburger, what do they give you? Hamburger's bad enough. They really want to give you cancer and heart problems. Then they give you the French fry. And what you're seeing here is when you fry it, it's actually 7 times worse for you, causing cancer. And think about how much of that we have. And how many people have cancer today. The older people sitting in this group, remember a time it was rare you see cancer. It's rare you don't see cancer now. That's the difference. This is a 7-fold elevation associated with higher cancer risk. Advanced glycation, ENs, AGEs, from when proteins or fats reach with sugar at high temperatures, accelerating cellular aging and elevating insulin resistance. A 2021 review showed that diets high in AGEs correlated with a 24% greater likelihood of metabolic syndrome. Now, those of you that are a little heavy here and you have diabetes or heart problems, that's called a metabolic syndrome. We have a new word for it because it used to be you either had heart problems or diabetes. Now we say everyone with diabetes will eventually have a heart problem. Everyone that's overweight will eventually have these problems. And these look like the Christmas cookies that my Hungarian grandmother made every year. We just couldn't wait for Christmas. And then, what's that one you put inside of whipped cream? You have a name for that? They have these things. And we'd be eating them, and nobody ever said a thing about it. They fry these things, and you get sick from them. Then we go to PAHs. Way back in the 1930s, think of this. How come I'm telling you this today, and this we knew in the 1930s? Because there's no money in them telling you not to do something. There's only money in you buying what they sell. And so Kenaway made his pivotal discovery linking polycyclic or aromatic hydrocarbons to cancer in the early 1930s. High temperature grilling or roasting of meat products, consuming charred, well-done meat regularly over 2 to 3 servings per week have been linked to increased colorectal cancer incidence in epidemiological studies, as is cured meats. Epidemiological studies mean all over the world. They look at it. They look at the amount of meat you eat, the amount of lunch meat you eat. What do you call lunch meat in Romania? Deli meat. And they found shockingly high incidence of colorectal cancer. These studies aren't only recent, they go back 30, 40 years, and the original study was so profound on bacon, you all know what bacon is, that they showed even very tiny amounts of bacon would increase colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is the fastest growing cancer in the history of cancer research. Let me go slow again so you get it. Having colon cancer today is the fastest growing cancer in the whole scientific history of cancer research. And it's no longer hitting old folks, it's hitting young folks. And the biggest growth are with 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and teenagers. So now we have 15 and 20-year-old kids, 30-year-old kids, basically with colorectal cancer because they eat these things. It was so bad, this study, no government, including your government, came out and told people to stop eating it, even though all the governments were alerted. So that you know, every government, including the Romanian government, have a scientific department. How many of you know that? Your tax dollars are paying for a scientific department here. And they chose, after we found out that eating these things cause deadly cancers, not to tell you. And the U.S. government, the same thing. The United Nations had to step in and this goes back 15 years ago, and said 2 pieces of bacon a week. And listen to what I'm saying. I used to eat the package every day. They said 2 pieces of bacon a week will give you 15% higher incidence of colon cancer. Think of that. Don't you think that's an international alert that we should be giving? Of course it is. And you and I tolerate because we expect it to happen. No longer do sane, healthy, and awake people have the ability to sit back. We've got to say no to this stupidity. Your biggest enemy is not Russia. It's the food industry and it's the drug industry. Remember that. How many of you are old enough to remember Nikita Khrushchev? He was a big deal, Nikita Khrushchev. He and Jack Kennedy, or President Kennedy, were always debating and talking. And Khrushchev was an interesting guy. He wasn't stupid. And he got with Kennedy, and they were talking, and the most frightening thing Khrushchev said, we do not have to worry about us bombing you, the United States. You're going to destroy yourself from inside. He said those words. And I was a young man, and I remember how that shook me, because he was right. And we systematically destroy ourselves. If you take your great-great-grandmother from Romania and showed her how we are living today, she'd be crying. She'd be crying. She'd say, what kind of stupidity is this? These people are eating out of cans and packaged food. They don't have their own gardens. 2 generations, 3 generations ago, every Romanian I knew in the United States had their own garden. And they were all organic. What do you think, they sprayed them? And today it's an odd thing. Oh, we've got to spend more money on organic food. Rather than, isn't it weird we have to spend more money on organic food? So if you're rich and smart, you don't suffer. But if you're not smart and not rich, you're going to have to suffer. Do you think that's an elitist thing? I think it's elitist. I think your government's in charge. Why would it be more money not to spray something? It should be more money to spray it. But the fact of the matter is, this is an international ploy. This is an absolute plan. Just like the plandemic was a plan, this is a plan. And you just basically stay sleeping, and you'll be permanently sleeping before you know it. You just basically have to wake up and say the word no, nay, nay, no more of this. I'm not going to do it anymore. Because when you participate and you don't do something about it, you're part of the problem. You say, well, not me, not me. Yes, you. If you still eat non-organic food, if you still completely cook your food, if you sit quietly when things are happening, you are part of the problem. How every single change has happened, starting with Jesus Christ. How many of you know the real story about Jesus Christ? Not what the Catholic Church told you. The real story. That he was shaking up Judaism. Christ was a Jew. He wasn't a Christian. And the rabbis were getting nuts. They were, robbing the people, lying to the people, stealing and everything. So he was there to shake things up. And every time something has moved forward, Martin Luther King, it's been somebody challenging the system. And the most egregious thing, the worst thing I've ever seen in the history of the human race is when we're actually weeding out the population by giving them poisons. By injecting poisons, eating poisons, putting poisons in their water, putting fluoride in the water. It is systematically weeding out the population. And it is a global phenomenon. Do you follow? This is not just one country. This is global. So high temperature grilling and roasting of meats consumed charred well is going to give you more cancer. So now, your DNA. So if you don't care about yourself, if you're suicidal, but you may care about your grandchildren and great-grandchildren and all of those people. Because now we realize when you eat this nonsense that it's going to permanently damage your DNA. If you were in here yesterday, we talked about now we have cracked 100, 200 generations ago. What your ancestors did are affecting your DNA today. But now, one other thing I'm going to add to it eating improperly is going to affect your great-grandchildren's and great-great-grandchildren. So ACHs manifest from amino acids, creatine, in muscle meats subjected to temperatures above 302. Everyone heats a meat above 150 centigrade. Everyone does. Yeah, because the other thing they keep telling you, you've got to heat it at a high temperature to kill what? The parasites. Now, one way I'd cure you of ever eating meat is Anna Maria was one of the leading microscopic researchers for 25 years. If you take any form of meat and take a microscope, you're going to see a discotheque there. But the discotheque is not going to be with people with polyester clothes. It's going to actually be parasites. And even after cooking meats, the parasites often remain. I'll give you a list of where the worst parasites are. Fish is number one. Overwhelmingly, fish overwhelmingly is number one. Chicken is number two. Turkey is number three. Pork is number four. So we all thought pork is the worst, fish is worse, turkey's worse, chicken's worse. Then we get to red meat. Then, depending upon where you are in the world, wild animals, wild fowl. Studies associate frequent ingestion of well-done or charred meat with notable uptick in DNA adduct formation, raising cancer risk. So you want to give your grandchildren cancer, keep eating meat. A 2025 study evaluated the impact of various cooking methods, beta-carotene, retention, and antioxidant capacity in biofortifying sweet potatoes. Now, by the way, sweet potatoes are an excellent, excellent food for you. If you don't have a blood sugar problem. Now, if you have cancer, you don't eat sweet potatoes because they're what? High in sugar. If you have diabetes, you don't eat them. But for the rest of us, even eating a raw sweet potato is delicious. You just have to get a knife, cut it really thin, and ideally you put it in a dehydrator like they show you how to do here. And you can put onion on it, garlic on it, whatever you like. It's better than any potato chip. When we have holidays at Hippocrates, our chef, Anna Maria, who are putting a brand new book out next month called Quantum Cuisine, literally make sweet potatoes so they taste cooked. You just take a Cuisinart, you take a high-speed blender, you put some cinnamon in, and before you know it, you don't need cooked. The problem you and I have is the mommy factor. How many of you know what the mommy factor is? When you were growing up as a little girl, a little boy, your mommy was showing you love through food. Do you follow this? And I used to think that it was substances in food, the fats, the sugars we were addicted to. But it's really the mommy, the emotional factor. Now, my mother really, really loved me. I had no doubt my mother loved, Anna Maria's mother loved her. And women were so subjected to be quiet. The one way you could fully express yourself is through feeding the family. Isn't that the Romanian mommy? Of course. So Romanian mommies all over the world. Love is food. So deep in your genetic thought pattern, you are thinking, when I'm saying change your diet, I'm going to reject what mommy said. Now remember, mommy was corrupted by the sick system too. It wasn't only you corrupted. So mommy was told meat was good for you. Mommy was told desserts were the best way to show love. Do you follow? And so you've learned these things. And when you start to go against these things in a society, they start to call you names. You're odd, you're strange, you're queer, you're a health nut, ba-bum, ba-bum-bum. You follow? All you have to do is learn to laugh. The one thing I know will never be making you well is if you take yourself too serious. Be happy. Relax. When people make fun of me, I make more fun of me. They make more fun, I'll make more and more fun of me. They make more and more fun, I make more and more and more fun. And eventually, what do they have to make fun about? Because I'm making more fun than they can make. If you think you have to be so serious about things, it's never going to work for you. You've got to loosen up, lighten up, be happy, relax. Microwaves. Research found that microwave cooking results in significant loss. Matter of fact, we know that microwaves, because they're very inexpensive now, leak. And one of the many, many causes 1/3 of our young married couples can't have babies now is because of the use of microwave. Way back in the 1950s, we knew that microwave changed the DNA chromosomal structure of a body when you eat it. You say, well, how about if I heat water in it? It even does that. So microwaves should never be in your house. We had a new house about 20 years ago, and one of our friends came to help us clean up things and move things. And there was a very expensive microwave in there. And I said to him, could you rip it out? He said, no, that's the best microwave. I said, I really like you, but I'm going to ask you if you want it. And he said, why? You won't use it? I said, it's damaging for you, but I'll give it to you. Nutrient destruction and food quality. Vitamins at risk. Boiling will leach out essential vitamins, including vitamin C, vitamin B, into cooking water. Light steaming reduces these losses, but raw consumption retain 100%. Prolonged boiling strips vegetable, potassium, magnesium, calcium significantly. Light steaming reduces these losses, but raw consumption retains 100%. Now, how many of you ever knew what those things were you were eating as a kid? At my house, I couldn't even identify a vegetable. They cooked them so much, it was like this green water with butter on top of it. And I'd say, what's that, Mommy? She'd say, it's string bean. So when I finally saw a string bean, I said, that's not a string bean, because it wasn't green water. And, this is what we do. Protein denaturing. Now, the Hippocrates diet is the highest protein diet in the world. How many of you know that? Now, this is going completely against what they propagandized to you. They brainwashed you to such a point. The meat industry and dairy industry has been spending since 1917 billions of dollars to brainwash you. Now, let me repeat. We know the date. We know how it happened. We could actually show you a picture of the first check. So the meat and dairy industry went to the academic industry, education, and said, let us help you fund books for little girls and little boys. But since we're funding the books, we want to have a section in there to talk about what to eat. So when you learned in Romania what to eat, guess who influenced that? Starting more than 100 years ago, the meat and dairy industry. Back 100 years ago, there was a food pyramid with 12 foods on it. Meat and dairy were one. There were 11 other healthy choices. Before you know it, there were 4. Meat was 1, dairy was 1, and at the bottom was vegetables. Yeah, those things that you look at on your plate that are green with butter on top of it. You follow what I'm saying? This is how they work on you. And so what we know is that when I was a boy, they would actually formally teach us in class, if you want to be a man, you have to eat meat. Now, you know what that does to a little impressionable 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy or girl? If you don't eat meat, you're not going to be a man. Oh, hey, I better eat a lot of meat. So you're out there eating meat. You're trying to find yourself. And you're eating more and more meat. Now, what's ironic as a scientist, the more meat you eat, the more feminine you become. This is not an opinion. I'm going to give you the science on it now. Meat inherently, naturally, has a lot of estrogen in it. But when they raise meat, they don't sell it by the healthy pound or kilo. They sell it by the kilo. And how do they fatten up the chicken and the turkey and the cow and the pork? By putting estrogens in it. Just like you. You see these fat guys here that are older with boy tits? It's because of all the estrogen that they're eating. And so men become feminine the more meat you eat. I always joke, but I mean it. Have you ever been to those bodybuilding competitions? They walk with Speedos like this? Now you know why. But women, unfortunately, you become masculine. Because when your body has more estrogens in it, it responds by creating what? More testosterone. So if the women are becoming more masculine, and right now it's shocking because in the Western culture, they are saying that 40% of our culture do not know if they're boys and girls below 12 years old. I've never seen anything like this in my life before. And look at, throughout history, 10% of the population is born homosexual. There always has been, there always will be homosexual, and God bless homosexuals. They're homosexual. What's that have to do with anything? You know, that's biologically what they are. But now we're talking about another 30% that have nothing to do with sexuality. It has to do with they don't have enough hormones to feel masculine. They don't have enough hormones to feel feminine. They have the wrong hormones going on. And this is a big reason. So when the top athletes in the world want to have the best results, they come to Hippocrates. So our history of 70 years have shown that. Right now, the top tennis player, Djokovic, is on the Hippocrates diet. The Williams sisters, the top 2 female tennis players in history, on the Hippocrates diet. Before my time at Hippocrates, Muhammad Ali won 2 of his fights on the Hippocrates diet. American football teams, half of the football team is plant-based now. Think of what I'm saying. So everything you've actually been told is wrong. One of the best stories we have is about 15 years ago, a guy who's a bit older than me, I think he's 77 now, came to us with stage 4 cancer of the colon. And he's a nice guy. He used to be in the military for 20 years, so he's very disciplined. He came out, he created a very successful building business. And he said when he was told he was going to die of colon cancer, I want to see the very top doctor. So he goes and spends all kind of money, like $2,000 to see the doctor for 15 minutes. And he said, I have 2 questions to you. Where did the cancer come from? And the doctor said, we don't know. And he said, the second question, if I do what you say, will the cancer go away? He said, I don't know. He said, you've been the top doctor in America for cancer for over 40 years. I've just spent $2,000 to get you to answer questions. And your answer in 2 simple questions is you don't know. So he got up, came to Hippocrates, healed cancer. You know what he does now? I said, you got to do what you loved as a kid. He said, well, I'm pretty successful. He said, I still work, but I don't have to work, 40, 50 hours a week anymore. He said, I used to bodybuild. I said, bodybuild again. Now he's 77, and he has to enter competitions with only 50-year-olds, because no 77, and he wins. Every single competition he wins on the Hippocrates diet. Wake up, people. You've been lied to. You've been mamatized. You're an addict. And all of these things add up to you don't want to change. The only inevitable thing in life that we will all do, like it or not, is change. And what do you and I not like to do? Change. So we just have to let go and relax. So excessive heat breaks down essential amino acids like methionine and creatine, reducing total protein. Cooking animal-based foods not only advance cardiovascular disease and cancer, they nullify, get rid of, the essential amino acid absorption. Any cooked meat is not a complete protein. How many of you know that? And is there any such thing as a raw meat? No. There's a dying carcass, the dying flesh of an animal that has no life in it. So if you're at the hospital and you stop breathing, do you know they put you on a machine called the EKG machine? If I took a fish, a chicken, or a red meat, and I put them on the machine, it would flatline. There'd be no life. So to consider meat raw, there's no such thing. It's a rotting carcass. You're eating a rotting carcass, loaded with, what did I just say 8 minutes ago? Parasites, bacteria, probably molds, probably yeast, all the deadly chemicals that animal ate. You say, well, I'm eating organic meat. That's bullshit. There's no such thing. Complete nonsense. That's for rich folks who want to feel good about what they do. All of that organic meat is out there eating the same grass that has the same pollution coming on it. The world is so polluted at this point, it's almost impossible, by the way, to avoid those things. And the only way to do it is eat plants which have very, 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 very small amounts if they're organic. Raw food harbors enzymes that assist digestion. Heating above 115 or 48 C renders the overwhelming majority of these enzymes inactive, potentially taxing the body's own enzyme reserve for digestion and active aging. In the 20th century, the top enzymologist, research doctor, was alive. He wrote a wonderful book that was redone with our co-founder, Viktoras Kulvinskas. And what the book was really about is how you're born with all of this enzyme activity. Matter of fact, for the first 25 years of your life, you have extra enzymes. But even when you're born, starting with your mother's milk, they are loaded with enzymes. Now, how many of you know that wonderful story about mother's milk? So when the baby comes out, and I don't know if I ever told you the story about our last child, we had all home births, all natural births. Why? Because the data shows if you have a baby in a hospital, there's a 6 to 7 time higher mortality rate, higher death rate. They'll tell you the opposite. They'll say it's dangerous at home to have the baby. Listen to me. Look at the international studies. There's a 6 to 7 time higher incidence of the child dying if you have a baby at a hospital. But what I know is these midwives are angels. They're the number one, they're mostly women. Now, I'm a man. What do I know about having a baby? That's it. And most doctors that deliver babies are men. And so when the midwife comes, we had 4 of them. So we have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. She was like Anna Maria's sister. I love this woman. I said, how many babies did you have? She said 9. I said, you're an expert. So now Anna Maria gets down in there's a birthing tub, as we call it. It's like a pool that children have in the backyard. You blow it up, and she squats down, and the baby comes out, and she lays in the water. It's warm, and the baby swims up to her breast, and I think I have a genius. Oh my God, it's a genius, the baby. And the midwife said, they all do that. And then she said, watch. And the baby starts to suckle on Anna's breast. And what comes out is colostrum. Whoa. How many of you know what colostrum is? This is amazing stuff. So God, if you will, the universe basically put colostrum there so that if you live to 150 years old, it has enough good bacteria to keep your immune system and your brain functioning in the colostrum that comes out minutes after the baby's born. Sadly, many of you did not breastfeed, because what pharmaceutical medicine convinced women is that formula is actually better than mother's milk. Dumb is dumb, and nobody said dumb gets smart. Now, why the heck do you have breasts? Now, I happen to like women's breasts a lot. But the reality is, I'm sure they're not there for me to look at. There has to be another purpose. Do you follow? And the purpose is to feed our offspring. And the fact is, many of you, because modern medicine told your mother breastfeeding's not as good as getting something out of a can that's almost all sugar. Look at the first ingredient of all formulas, even natural formulas, sugar. So we immediately get this poor little innocent creature addicted to the most severe of all drugs called sugar. Yesterday we talked about that. We may talk more about that later. And then we don't give the baby an immune system. And remember, the immune system is how you stay young, vital, and healthy. And if you do get sick, it's how you reverse sick. The only people who do not get well is people who have weak immune systems. Let me repeat this again. It all comes down to that immune system. You get sick and you die if you don't have a strong immune system. Where does it come from in nature? Colostrum from mother's milk if you breastfeed. Your brain does not function without healthy bacteria. So a lot of you that have foggy brain, you're confused, you're lost. Oh, I don't know where I am, who I am. It's because the damn gut is unhealthy. Now, the greatest way for me to make the gut really unhealthy is to eat animal foods. The milk from another species, that's perverted. Many years ago, one of the 35 books that I wrote is called Dairy Deception. I loved going all over the world and showing that presentation because the 5th slide was a very, very attractive, well-dressed woman under a cow sucking from its breast. And no matter where I was in the world, people would gasp, "Ooh," like I was showing pornography. Whoo! And as soon as they settled down, 3 slides later, I had a very attractive man with his suit underneath the cow sucking from its breast. Whoo! After they do the second ooh, I say, hey, how many of you have been sucking from a cow's breast? Nobody raises their hand. Because, oh, well, I go to the supermarket and I buy in a carton. You've been sucking from a cow's breast. But if you don't put 2 and 2 together, you end up with 9. Do you follow me? So you've been thinking 9 rather than 2 and 2. How many of you, if I said part of today's program, we're going to take a bus, we're going to go to the countryside, and we're going to all suck from the breast of a cow, would come with me? And by the way, if you were crazy enough to come with me, the police would arrest us and put us in jail. But if I go down the street and I buy milk in a carton, nobody says a thing. Do you follow? Now let's think about this one. If I take meat like chicken, a lot of you love chicken. You actually have been lied to. It's a healthy food. Chicken's worse for you than steak. It has more animal fat than steak. It also has, unique in chicken and turkey, a leukemic virus that causes every form of cancer. If you want to find really interesting science, 68 years of science from Dr. Virginia Livingston. Dr. Virginia Livingston, a friend. I knew her. And what she showed is what I'm going to explain now. If I took that organic chicken from the countryside in Romania, nothing happened to it except you're going to kill it, and took it in your kitchen and said, we can't refrigerate this. One rule is you cannot put this in your refrigerator. What's it going to smell like in 2 days? What's it going to smell like in 3 days? Do you follow me? How many of you would go into that kitchen after 4 or 5 days? None of you. What do you think happens in your body when you put the dead carcass of an animal in your gut? It's rotting, it's decomposing, and it's creating unhealthy bacteria. And when you have unhealthy bacteria in your gut, you cannot have healthy bacteria that keeps you strong, keeps you healthy, and keeps you mentally clear. It's impossible because the bad guys win. Now, how many of you want to be with the bad guys? Raise your hand. Well, then you're going to have to give up all this nonsense. The Romanian lifestyle, as they call it. It's not the Romanian lifestyle. It's the meat and dairy lifestyle. That's what it is. It's the industry lifestyle. And they love it in the pharmaceutical companies because you keep doing what you were told to do. You'll eventually need doctors. You'll eventually need drugs. You may even need surgeries. Do you follow? So it's called a revolving economy. The economy of death and dying. You start with death and dying things, you start to die, and before you know it, now when you're dying, you need more death and dying guys. Phytochemicals, these are the most magical elements ever discovered in the history of biology, science, and healthcare. So Hippocrates started in 1956. As Anna Maria told you yesterday, after our founder reversed advanced stage 4 cancer. The Harvard doctors, Harvard in America is the top. Nobody's more than Harvard. They said to her, you're going to die in 90 days. She didn't die. She healed advanced stage 4 cancer. Opened up Hippocrates in 1956. And we started to watch people come and get better, but we really didn't know how it happened. We had no concept of how it happened, really, until the late 1980s. We actually watched thousands of people reverse aging, stop disease, and reverse catastrophic disorders. Didn't know how it happened. In the late 1980s, they started to do a whole lot of research on plant medicine. Now remember, the only medicine that was on the planet Earth used by our species, Homo sapien, was plant medicine until Rockefeller took over in 1917. There was no other medicine except plant medicine. Remember that. In the civilized places in the world that you call primitive, all they use is plant medicine now. And the fact, quite simply, was in these cells of the plants, they found magic. Now let's go back. Yesterday I gave you a history, but we'll extract a brief part of that. That the planet started how many billions of years ago? Remember, 3.5 billion years ago. But somewhere about 1 billion years ago, the first plants came on the planet. 1 billion years ago, first plants came on the planet. And the universe, how many of you saw what happened 2 months ago, where they were in deep space with the strongest telescope, and they found mathematical formations. And now the top astronomers and physicists in the world are saying they actually believe that we live within consciousness. This is really interesting stuff. So the universe you and I live in have now started to show us is consciousness. Up until now, we thought we created consciousness. Now what we're realizing is we're tapping into the consciousness of the universe. This is great shit, because it's going to change things, going to change the pattern. And the consciousness of the universe 1 billion years ago realized eventually there were going to be these really goofy creatures called human beings. Isn't this amazing? We didn't show up till millions and millions, hundreds of millions a year later. Hundreds of millions a year. And the universe, God if you will, actually said, these idiots are going to show up and they're going to get themselves sick, and we're going to have to encode in the plants medicine. Now challenge anything I say. The wonderful thing I love about science is when you really look at science, it's really magical. The science you and I were taught in school was nonsense, most of it. How many of you really like science? If you had good teachers, you'd all love science. If you had somebody who was really excited about science, you'd all love science, because science is unbelievable. And so now what happened is the universal consciousness of the universe basically said these people are going to show up, called Homo sapiens, and we've got to put medicine in the plants. Now we show up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of years later, and we were okay until about the agrarian age. Now what does that mean? Yesterday we spoke. 65% of the humans have been on the earth, we were nomads. We didn't have clothes, we didn't have houses, we didn't have buildings, we didn't have governments, we didn't have land, we just had everything we needed, and we walked from the south to the north and the north to the south. It was quite a nice life in some ways. Think about that. 65% of the time we were on this earth, we were nomads. Now, how did we get into the idea that we were hunters and gatherers? This is really interesting. Follow the history. Up until 1862, nowhere in writing in anthropology did we talk about human diet. Nobody knew what the human diet was. But in 1862, a bunch of fat prick Oxford guys in England sat down because they were eating meat and assumed we were hunters and gatherers. How many of you know right now today in 2025, sitting here, that 60% of the world's population primarily thrive on plants? So, well, that's not what it looks like in Romania. I didn't talk about Romania. I talked about 7.5 billion people, 60% of 7.5 billion people thrive on plants. Not because I say so, this is data. This is science we're talking about. And by the way, who are the least sick people in the world? Those people. Now, you don't have to be much more than just an average thinker to look at the data. One of the interesting things I do, I go out to medical conferences and I speak to mainstream medical doctors. I love it the most because it's like talking to children. It really is. And not even smart children. And one of the slides I show is an inverted pyramid. So as soon as they see the pyramid, they immediately think I'm going to talk about New Age nonsense. And I let them, I lead them on. And every once in a while, one of them are idiotic enough to say, what are you going to talk about, New Age stuff, not science? I say, no. As a matter of fact, if you look closely, I'm giving you an international chart for cancer. And I said, notice something. At the very top, the base of the pyramid that's upside down, the countries that, by the way, consume the highest amount of animal-based foods have the highest amount of cancers. And the one at the very bottom are countries that consume no animal-based food. We call them hungry, poor people living in Africa or Central America. You follow? Oh, those poor people. They're running around, they're having fun, they're 100 years old. You spend most of your time collecting money to pay for a mortgage, eat food, until you now lose all that money because you go to the doctor or hospital. That's what you do. If they're poor people, I'm going to take my clothes off and move to that. You follow what I'm saying to you? And as soon as I show them what I'm showing, a data-based pyramid that shows when people don't eat meat, they have literally or virtually no cancer. And the more meat you eat, it goes up, and goes up to the top. Countries like Romania, the United States. The only places worse than Romania and the United States are Australia, Venezuela. They actually eat more meat than we do. And guess what? They're even slightly sicker than we are. So heat-sensitive antioxidants and flavonoids can significantly degrade under standard cooking temperatures. Overcooking or frying raises this loss erosion to overwhelming majority of plant foods' protective benefits. So back in 1980s, we realized why people got well on the Hippocrates diet. We were giving raw, organic, green plant food that had the most medicine in it, called a phytochemical. So write this down, never stop thinking about it. Once you cook the plant, the medicine's not there. So when I learn about these things, I go to the smart guys and smart gals. I report these things. That's not what I do. My work is to help people heal. But the smart guys that spend their whole life studying this, I get to know them. And the guy who's top in the world is called Dr. David Williams, and I actually flew him to Hippocrates. I had him do conferences there, and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, I didn't know anyone was interested in the research I was doing for the last 35 years. I said, you're writing the Bible for Hippocrates. I said, we are more than interested because I don't know what you know and you're teaching us what we have to be taught. That these medicines in the raw, green, plant-based food wipe out diseases more than any other medicine that has been looked at in the history of the human race. Let me repeat it again so you don't miss what I'm saying. That the top research scientists in the world are now saying the most significant medicine they've ever found is uncooked green leafy plant food, and it wipes out diseases significantly more than any medicine, including herbal medicine, we've seen in the past. Now think of that. Why don't they want you to know that? How many of you realize how inexpensive salad is? How many of you realize if you remain healthy until the day you died at 100, they don't make any money off you? How many of you realize that pain and suffering is part of your legacy? That you've watched your parents do it, you've watched your grandparents do it. So you assume you're going to get old and decrepit and lose your memory and not be able to be functional? You assume that just because you've seen everyone do it before you. But it's not real. Remember, all of your reality is fabricated by your mind. The only thing that's real is the fact that you can fabricate it. Nothing else is real. One point, in fact, if I say part of today's program is we're all going to go see a movie, you say, well, that's really nice of them. They're all going to get in buses. We're going to go out. After we suck the milk from a cow, we're going to go to a movie. Now, I promise you, if we have somebody standing outside the movie theater and we ask what movie we saw, she would say it's a love movie. She would say it's a war movie. She would say it's a bad movie. He'd say it's the best movie I ever saw. Do you follow me? She'd say it's in French. She'd say it's in English. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. We all saw the same exact 2-hour movie, but we all saw something wildly different. Isn't that amazing? So don't ever get caught up into what you see is what is real. What you see is what you process as real. Do you follow that? You in your own mind think it's real. But you've got to grow beyond your mind. You've got to grow to a point in your life where you see larger than you, because if it's not larger than you, you're less than you should be. Do you follow what I'm saying to you? You've got to think larger than you so that you keep moving forward. You don't want to contain yourself and restrain yourself. So this medicine is proof of God. If you say, for many years I was an atheist for good reason. The religion I was brought up taught me that I was a sinner, I was a horrible person, I was a little piece of shit, that I was going to suffer for my whole life because of all the sins I've done. I said, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That sounds like a nasty thing. I choose not to believe in that. And then all at once I started to really do a deep dive over the decades into science and started to realize the perfection of the multiple endless universes and what they have to offer. There has to be a higher source of wisdom, a higher source of goodness than us. And it's not for us to challenge that, it's us to become that. You know, if you read your theology, which I've read it all, by the way, it actually says in every theology on the planet that you are made in the image of God. Let me repeat that so you're clear. If you're a Christian, you were told you're made in the image of God. And what does that mean? This is not debatable. That means you're supposed to live at the excellence, the highest level of excellence that you possibly can. Now let's make this even more simple. If God walked in here, whatever God looks like to you, remember, we all have different opinions. Some would think it's a good-looking, sexy guy with a beard. Other people, a little chubby guy. Some of you may think it's a woman. Could be. About time we hire a woman to God. The men haven't done a good job. But let's imagine now you're going to have a conversation with God. Would you say, hey, God, I know you've asked me to do something, but let's negotiate. I don't really want to do what you said. You say, yes, sir. Yes, madam. You follow? Of course I'm going to do it. So every time you make a choice, you are not to negotiate. You're to follow through with what you know is the top, the best, and the most excellent way to achieve something. If not, you're living a subhuman existence. And then you whine and you complain when you get sick and you lose. Why? Because you didn't put the time, effort, and sincerity into your effort. The universe did. Leukocyte response and inflammation. So now we go to what causes all disease and aging, inflammation. Leukocyte is an elevated white blood count, often triggered by infection or stress. Research indicates that high heat altered proteins trigger this immune response, leading to mild systemic, that's throughout the body, inflammation if repeated. Now, one thing we know is you never look at any sickness that the person's not inflamed. Now, the holistic doctors who think you're stupid give you the wrong story. They say inflammation creates disease. Wrong story. They left part of the story out. Bad lifestyle, epigenetics, creates inflammation. So it's bad lifestyle creates disease. Inflammation's a symptom of bad lifestyle. And inflammation's a good thing. If, for instance, I'm running and I fall and I hurt my leg, it gets inflamed, and it says, you idiot, you've got to stop running now. Isn't that amazing? It's beautiful. So don't think inflammation is the end. The inflammation's the beginning. But what we're saying is you're going to get inflammation just by eating cooked food. And the worst of all cooked food is animal protein. Animal protein. Now, that study just came out 3 years ago. Long-term implications. Chronic low-level leukocytosis contribute to a pro-inflammatory state, increasing vulnerability to insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and chronic illness. Shifting towards raw food mitigates, gets rid of, these immune-destroying triggers. Now, you don't want your immune system to be thinking, I'm here to get rid of inflammation. You want it to be thinking, I'm here to get rid of viruses. I'm here to get rid of bacteria. I'm here to get rid of cancer, mold, yeast, fungus. Because if your immune system is not doing its job, you will inevitably die. Do you follow that? It's straightforward, simple stuff. Heating plants versus raw meals. 2001 study, participants consuming fried or roasted proteins at least 5 times per week displayed a 70% higher post-meal leukocytosis count than those who ate raw plant-based proteins contained food. Now look at this. Plant-based diets are inherent substance. Raw plant-based diets preserve natural occurring enzymes, vitamins, phytochemicals. Meanwhile, prolonged or high temperature cooking can destroy all micronutrients, raising chronic disease risk. Hippocrates' 70 years of clinical research on hundreds of thousands have concretely established these necessities of raw plant food. So in real time, when people come to us, there's two kinds of people that come to us. Really smart people and really sick people. The really smart people come before they're really sick. Do you follow? They say, hey, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be like my mom and dad, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, and my neighbors. I don't want to prematurely age. I don't want to have a heart attack. I don't want to have diabetes. I don't want to have a stroke. So they come to us. And then the other people were told by a doctor, you're going to die. So they come to us. Because they've actually gotten to the end with the allopathic system. And once the allopathic system has pulled all the tricks they can, giving you all the drugs that they want, and then it doesn't work, they finally say, nothing more we can do. Like matter of fact. Matter of fact. Why? Because they never once ask you how you got sick. Have you ever had a mainstream doctor say, how do you eat? How do you think? How do you like your job? Are you in a good marriage? Anyone else? No. They would, if I asked a doctor to do that, she or he would laugh and say, what's that have to do with it? These people have a pill deficiency. They must be lacking pills. So we better give them pills. So wake up. Maximizing vitamins and minerals. So you keep them in. Raw vegetables conserve near total vitamin content, importantly vitamin C, folate, and potassium. If you don't have potassium, your kidneys and your heart do not work. Folate, your nervous system doesn't work, your brain doesn't work. Vitamin C, your immune system doesn't work. One clinical trial showed a great blood sugar reduction in participants who consume more raw plant food. The two most rapid reversals we see for disease are diabetic and heart problems. Matter of fact, when the people come to us with heart problems or diabetes, we've got to monitor their medicines really closely. Because if we don't get rid of the medicines quick, they could die. So thank you. Very soon, within days after people start on this program, they no longer need the insulin. They no longer need the blood thinners. Matter of fact, when you're eating the way nature, God, and the universe intends you to eat, your blood naturally thins. Do you follow? So if you now put additional man-made blood thinners in, you could have a stroke. But why, when you go to the doctor doesn't say to you, take green juice, eat green vegetables. Even if they're good people, they've not been trained to do that. And the doctor will tell you, oh, don't eat salad when you're on anticoagulants. How many of you were told that? Well, you have a heart problem, don't eat salad. It's nuts. It's totally the opposite. This is so senseless. This is so bizarre, but it is so common, and you and I just take for granted that's the way it is. Well, we've got to stop that. We've got to stop it. Phytochemicals and anti-inflammatory benefits. Polyphenols, quercetin, are critical for fighting free radical damage. Consuming raw, cruciferous vegetables can activate more antioxidants than their cooked counterparts. Significantly lower CRP. How many of you have doctors that are smart enough to look at CRP? We used to look at cholesterol. No competent doctor looks at that anymore. It's interesting, but not that interesting. We look at CRP. And that's inflammation. That's what's going to indicate, is she going to have a heart attack? Is he going to have a stroke? And if your doctor's not looking at this, you are certainly in the wrong doctor's hands. This should be on every single medical blood test everywhere in the world today. This is probably one of the most important markers. Enzyme activity in raw food. Now, I said to you about 9.5 minutes ago that you were born with extra enzymes. By the time you're 25, your body produces far, far less. By the time you're 60, you're in trouble. Your body's not producing any. So this is why Anna Marie and I choose to take a lot of supplemental enzymes. So if you ask me, the number one anti-aging supplement, it's the enzymes, the digestive enzymes we have here. You have some of those here? Okay. There's nothing that comes close to that. So when I'm home, I'm taking 20 of those a day. Why? I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy that this is the 6th country of 7 that I'm lecturing. I'm happy I have the energy to do this. I love to do this, and I never miss a beat. But if I didn't have the energy to do this, I'd be sitting around saying, I'm old. I'm in my mid-70s. I should be retired. You know who retires? People that aren't happy with their life. That's who retires. If you haven't been happy in your life, you need to get away from your life. And then when you go to your new life in retirement, you'll be unhappy there too. I promise you. Because you have not found your P word. What's a P word? Passion. You find your passion, you're going to keep going. If you say, what's the number one cause for long life? It's passion. That's it. Yes, you have to eat healthy food. Yes, you have to exercise. But if you don't have passion, you're screwed. Passion's the big one. So these enzymes determine how healthy, how youthful, how vibrant. When you see somebody who's really shining and glowing, they walk into a room, I can promise you, you're seeing the enzymes coming out of them. That's how amazing it is. And only raw food that are plant foods have enzymes in it. You say, well, do animals have enzymes? Counterproductive enzymes. The dying flesh of an animal that you choose to consume is going to take enzymes out of your body and give you nothing. Zero. You start breaking down micronutrients before the stomach does. Research associates consistent raw enzyme intake with reduced bloating and better nutrient absorption. I'd say probably half of you here have digestion problems. Eating raw food at first is difficult because your body's not used to eating roughage. And then you have idiot doctors who don't know anything. They didn't take one day of nutrition in school, but now they became nutritional guys. Basically say to you, you can't digest raw food. Here's a scientific fact. The only food that has anything to digest is raw food. As I've just pointed out to you, the other ones are disease-causing elements. Same food that could be healthy for you, keep you young, keep you vibrant, prevent and reverse disease, if you cook them, become damaging to you. And in fact, it took me 2.5 years for my body to get used to roughage. I never ate roughage in my life. I'll never forget, my first serious girlfriend had a really odd family. They ate salad. So I would come home to my mother and say, they eat this green stuff that you have to chew. She'd say, that's salad, we don't eat it. Isn't that amazing? How many of you grew up in that family? Raise your hand. Yeah. It was like, the only time I ever saw anything raw, they'd put it as a little decoration on the side of a hamburger. And I'd gag. What's that? Now I juice it by the kilo. So just remember, people, most of what you've been taught is completely wrong, not a little wrong, completely wrong. Meat makes you strong and masculine. Meat makes you feminine and fat and sick. Okay. Eating cooked food is more digestible. It has nothing to digest. The only food that digests is raw food, because now you have the nutrition in it. I just went through an hour of science on that for you, if you get that one. And so, everything. My first mentor was this wonderful woman who was probably my age when I met her. I was 19, she was 75, and she was from New York, and she used to scream. Women of her generation, to be heard by anyone, had to scream. Her name was Lillian. Hello, I'm Lillian, she'd say. She said, whatever those bums tell you, do the opposite. That's what's right. And I'm like a kid. I'm thinking to myself, you mean everything I've been told is the opposite of true? And I said, you've got to be wrong, Lillian. Now I was 40, I started to realize, oh my God, she was right. Whatever they told you, the opposite is actually the truth. Raw diet and disease outcomes. Epidemiological data linked diets high in raw products to a 23% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, 15% reduction in certain cardiovascular markers, and raw diets also tend to be lower in total caloric density. Matter of fact, the book we came here and lectured about the last time, The Self-Healing Diet, we looked at about 184 studies from around the world, and who won hands down is the Hippocrates diet for weight loss and weight gain. Now you say weight gain? Yeah, weight gain. Little skinny ones that come to us gain an average of 1.5 kilos to 2 kilos during their stay. Because when you're malnourished and you're a little skinny thing and you're not getting any real nutrients, of course you're going to remain skinny. So thin people start to gain muscular weight, and fat people lose weight like crazy. Real-world statistical inflammation markers like CRP drop when raw food is consumed. Anna Marie can tell you that. People come in with shockingly high CRP on their way to heart attack, strokes, and they regulate commonly within 3 weeks. LDL, that's a bad cholesterol, improves by 8 to 12 milligrams when half of your daily produce is eaten raw. We're not even saying 100%. They couldn't find enough people to study with 100% raw. So they look at half of it was raw. And look at what drop it was. Body weight significantly, weight loss over 3 to 6 months was observed in raw food-focused interventions. Practical strategies. Minimizing harmful compounds. When in the conquest of disease, that means fighting a disease, ideally consume 100% organic, uncooked, plant-based diet, high in sprouts and microgreens. These people that grow sprouts here, all of those vendors today, you have the right vendors. These are great people. Let's give them a hand out there for what they're doing. The number one pharmacy in Romania is sitting here. That's the pharmacy you should be going to out there. Transitioning to raw food. Introduce more raw vegetables, sprouts, microgreens, and legumes, and sprouted nuts. Even a 20% increase in raw food intake will measurably drop acrylamide exposure, lower AGEs, and reduce leukocytosis spike. So a lot of you coming here, this is all new to you, I understand this, and this is probably very shocking to you, and a lot of you would like to say that Brian's got to be wrong. He's just like Donald Trump. Well, I'm not like Donald Trump. And I don't lie. I just come to tell you the truth. And so Anna Marie and I are very blessed that we carry the torch of sanity in an insane world. You know, we try to light the way for you to walk in the right direction. And some of you sitting here have a very large problem. You have a disease. You've got to embrace this immediately. So when people come to us with advanced diseases, they instantly have to be 100% on this. But some of you have the opportunity to say, I'm going to take a year to do this. And every month I'm going to go down 10%. And then it's a very easy transition. But the big thing you've got to get away from, we spoke about yesterday, are the sugars and the animal fats, the animal foods. These are the big addictors. These are the big killers. So if you could go out of here and even eat a shitty plant-based diet rather than a typical Romanian meat and dairy diet, you're going to be halfway there. Halfway there. And then slowly we start to introduce the medicines, the food, the nutrition. Now there's nobody that doesn't get this. When I go out to talk to baby children, 5 and 6-year-old children, they get it. You don't want to get it. I understand that. You know, if I say to a child, I've done this on 25 different occasions. I take a vegetable, I say if I cook it or if I eat it raw, which is better, 100% of the kids say raw. You would say, well, I know. On Dr. Google, on Dr. Schmohoki said, you know, you're always trying to find a compromise for reality. Vivid reality is rare. Do you follow that? Clear, honest, trustful reality is rare. And so when you see it, you can't even identify it, most of you. stimulate cooking through dehydration. So simulation, I mean, if it wasn't for a dehydrator, I wouldn't be here today. Because now I'm brave and big 55 years later. I was a broken boy. Remember, I had the mommy factor. I was severely obese, 120 kilos. I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I smoked marijuana from the time I was 12 to the time I was 20, every day. That was who I was. And the fact is, it was a big transition for me. So like you, I wanted to slip back. Don't you think I wanted cookies? Of course. So what happened is I was surrounded by very wise and very strong women. I wasn't strong. And every time I'd say, let's go out to the health store and buy organic cookies, they'd say, no, let's dehydrate cookies. How many of you use dehydrators here? Raise your hand. These are lifesavers. So the first couple of years, I would not have stuck to this if it wasn't for dehydrated food. Because the dehydrated food made the raw food taste cooked. So I could make a cookie that tastes like a cookie. I could make a nut loaf that tasted like a meatloaf. Do you follow? And it's a dehydrator that does it, because it doesn't heat it to that 48 degrees. It heats it to 42 degrees, 43 degrees, and it dries it, and if you pull it out, it's still warm. So the 3 or 4 months here a year that you get really cold, you take it out of the dehydrator. That's how you do it. Initially, you can also use a food thermometer. They're very inexpensive. Probably €5 you get them. And the food thermometer, you can actually blend up a lot of vegetables, put your favorite vegetables in there, put it on the stove and heat it to 43 degrees. Now you have a warm. Is it perfect? No. But, imperfection is the first step to perfection. Remember that? And so then you have to do these things. These are the things Anna Marie and I did. And then eventually you become so comfortable doing the right thing, the wrong thing looks wrong. At first, this looked wrong to me. What do you mean? I can't eat cookies. What do you mean? I can't, because you're so programmed. We're all so programmed by the dishonest industries that led you to believe these things. You're programmed. And as long as you know that, just like an alcoholic will always be an alcoholic until he or she says, I have a problem. Now you can change. You can change. Focus on variety and aim for at least 50% of your product intake is uncooked or minimally processed form to harness vital enzymes and antioxidants. Within 2 to 3 months, you're going to start to feel an energy you've never felt. I mean, I went from a horribly bad American diet to a pretty bad vegan diet to one summer I was living in the western part of America where every day it was 40 degrees and sunny. It was very hot. And I just migrated to not cooking my food. I wasn't interested. I was a single guy. I wasn't interested in going into the kitchen where it would get hotter. So I just ate raw food. And like 2.5 months or 10 weeks into it, I realized I felt remarkable. I didn't even have a plan, actually. I just felt totally different. And I remember thinking when I first became a vegan, I'll never get healthier than this. And when I compared a vegan diet, a cooked vegan diet, to this, it's night and day. Like one, the sun comes out, the other, it's a very cloudy day. And so you're going to have to transition to do this, but once you feel the benefit, you won't turn back. So here are your health gains. Reducing high heat cooking can yield decreased inflammation, better metabolic markers, enhanced longevity. How many of you want the last one? Good. So here's what we can show you scientifically now. The figure illustrates cross-sections, MRI-based nutrient mapping, and chemical shifts imaging in a CSI to visualize nutrient disruption within the seed. You see where they cook it, how there's a disruption, where the raw one is no disruption there? You see the difference? First one there is sugar. look at what happens. Amino acid, look at what happens. So you can actually see the frequency, vibrational frequency. Once you heat it up, it destroys the element. It destroys the nutrient. Because we have to talk in nutrients so you'll understand it, but whenever I say nutrients, it's a code word for frequencies. Raw foods retain maximum nutritional benefit while transitioning to a healthier, increased longevity diet. So you want more science? How many of you are scientists here? Yes, there's a QR code. This one I read about 250 hours of science on. So we access the most important studies that lead that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dance a little bit. So let's get a little bit of Bruce Springsteen on there. And let's make it loud enough I can hear it.